Sometimes you get to a point in the NFL with your team where nothing is working and you can't get your team over the hump and you need to do a hard reset on the team. Nowadays, NFL teams, owners, and GMs are actually pretty good at assessing when they need to start rebuilding and hit the big red button, metaphorically, to start on a good old rebuild. However, there are a couple teams this year that I think actually should have started on a rebuild this year and didn't, and I made a list of those teams. But before I start this list, I want to give some mentions to teams that didn't quite make the list and some people might have put it on their list, and I'll explain why I didn't. Okay, so first off is the Bears. I think the Bears should not have restarted the rebuild this year simply because of Justin Fields. I think this is basically Fields' last chance to prove that he is a capable NFL starter. Justin has obviously been very good when it comes to the running department in his career, but passing it hasn't been so great. He has a career completion percentage of 59.7, which obviously is not that good. If Fields next year doesn't have a considerable upgrade with his new weapons, then I think it's time to unfortunately give up on Justin Fields and trade him for what they can and get the Bears started on another rebuild. I would be genuinely surprised if the Cardinals don't get the first overall pick after the 2023 season is over, but I also think that even if Kyler is healthy to play near the back end of the 2023 season, they should still sit him and let him play Call of Duty, since they probably at that point would be out of playoff contention. It's still kind of shocking that the Cardinals started 7-0 in 2021 and had the number 1 seed in their hands, and they are where they are right now in 2023. Their QB again is the reason why I think they should hold on going full rebuild mode right now. Kyler still has a lot of potential to be a great NFL starter, and that's all you really need to have a good team. They had to release D-Hop instead of trading them, which obviously wasn't the best thing for the organization, but if Kyler can return to his early 2021 form again and get a few more pieces in the 2024 draft, they could be back to winning again. And if they get that first overall pick in 2024, they have the chance to draft Marvin Harrison Jr., and if he's anything like his father, then Kyler's got a number 1 wide receiver again, just like when he had D-Hop. I honestly feel kind of bad for the Patriots, which is kind of weird to say now since they've terrorized the league for years. In my opinion, I don't think they have a clear direction on where to go, which is why they're mentioned on this list. I don't know if a rebuild is quite what they need, since they have a top 10 caliber defense and some good pieces on offense like Ramondre Stevenson, Juju, and Hunter Henry. However, basically everyone knows they are probably going to be last in the AFC East and once again not make the playoffs. Mac Jones is still a huge question mark on their team. In my opinion, their best case scenario, to me at least, is Mac Jones kind of becomes an Alex Smith level QB, which we've already seen is not enough to win a Super Bowl, but maybe a playoff game. And it's also unlikely Bill Belichick allows a rebuild to happen, since he is chasing Don Shula's record for most wins by an NFL coach ever, and he only has a limited amount of time left to do that. My guess is the Patriots stay around a 7-10, 8-9, or 9-8 team, while maybe sneaking in the wild card every now and again in the next few years just to get blown out by like the Jags, Bills, or Bengals. Okay, now that we have those dishonorable mentions out of the way, let's get to the actual list. If you agree or disagree, please let me know, and if there's any other teams you think should be up on this list, please tell me in the comments.
Here we come, baby. Just win, baby. Feel the storm of the cold autumn wind, baby.
You know, this first one is kind of tough. I really thought the Raiders were going to be a good team last year. I'm kind of a big Derek Carr fan, so to see it end like it did is pretty sad. Anyway, the Raiders, for the most part, have the same team from last year except quarterback-wise. To help the Raiders go back to the winning ways of the past, they got Jimmy Garoppolo, which, I mean, I get it. Jimmy G does win a lot, but I think this time it's just not going to work out. Look, if you can't win with Derek Carr and Devontae Adams, you're probably not going to win with Jimmy G and Devontae Adams. The Raiders in 2022 were one of the most disappointing teams of the year, starting out 0-3 and ending with a 6-11 record. The Raiders also decided to do their best Falcons impression throughout the year too. In week 2, they had a 20-point lead over the Cardinals at home. They lost that game. In week 5, they had a 17-point lead against the Chiefs. They lost that game. In week 9, they had a 17-point lead over the Jaguars. They lost that game too. And finally, in week 14, the Raiders had a 13-point lead over the Rams, and they let Baker Mayfield lead a 98-yard drive to beat them. If they'd won all these very winnable games, they could have gone anywhere from like 9-8 to 11-6 and possibly make the playoffs. Maybe we should have expected this from the Raiders though, because since 2010, they've made the playoffs twice, and Derek Carr has only played in one playoff game, which they lost against the Bengals. Now, for that game, I will give them the benefit of the doubt. They played the eventual AFC champions in the game while also having a bit of ref luck against them. So, you know, it's a tough break, but they still could have won that game. The Raiders team hasn't won a playoff game though since 2002 either. I like that they finally decided to end the Derek Carr era since it wasn't working for both sides, but I feel like letting go of Derek Carr Carr was supposed to be an era-defining move, and they should have hit the reset button there. I think the reason the Raiders actually didn't blow up the team was originally because they thought they were going to get either Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, but Tom Brady retired, and by that time it was very clear that Aaron Rodgers was only going to go to the Jets and no other team. Once they found out they weren't going to get a premier QB in the league, they should have blown it up there, but instead they said, well, screw it, Jimmy G wins a lot, so we'll sign him. And if it wasn't more clear that the Raiders don't plan on rebuilding right now, a couple days ago the Raiders tried to buff up their defense when they signed Marcus Peters to a one-year deal. I don't really understand why the Raiders don't go full rebuild mode here. One of the best quarterback prospects for a while, Caleb Williams, is in the upcoming draft, and a team that is most likely to get the first overall pick probably won't even draft him. This gives you the best chance to blow it up right now and draft your franchise quarterback, and you don't need to get the first overall pick either. And if the Raiders instead go 5-12 and get like the 6th overall pick and miss out on Williams and he turns out to be a great QB, this will haunt the Raiders franchise for a while. In my opinion, the Raiders should have just started Brian Hoyer, who is apparently their number 2 QB, for the year and let the chips fall where they may. And as I'm making this video, Josh Jacobs reportedly isn't going to training camp and actually booked a flight out of Vegas, so I mean, if the Raiders really wanted to, they could probably trade him for some draft picks too. Where the Raiders are right now, they basically have no future with the current team and might as well try to get Caleb Williams in the draft and rebuild around him if he pans out the way many people think he will. I feel really bad for Saints fans who had one of the best quarterbacks of all time for years in Drew Brees, and all you guys got was one Super Bowl and countless painful playoff losses. Still, as a Cowboys fan, I would easily take that one Super Bowl. I swear, the Saints only lose playoff games in the most heartbreaking ways. But Drew Brees has been gone for 2 seasons, and since then, the Saints have failed to make the playoffs both years. However, I actually think the New Orleans Saints will find their way in the playoffs this year, but it's not because they are Super Bowl contenders, it's because they play in the Horde NFC South and by far have the best roster out of the NFC South. But I think it would be a way better position for the Saints to have just blown it up right there and start a rebuild. I mean, what's the point of making the playoffs just because you're the only decent team in your division, but never making it further than the wild card or divisional round? And signing Derek Carr only further cements the fact they are trying to win now, but with this roster, I don't think they can get much further than what I just mentioned. I know Michael Thomas is maybe coming back this year, and who knows if he'll even play the full season. I mean, the last time he did was 2019, and yes, Derek Carr is a better quarterback than Jameis Winston, but I just don't think with this roster that Derek Carr will lead you to a Super Bowl win, or heck, maybe even a playoff win. They also got Jamal Williams, who is a decent running back, but I also think he's a bit of a touchdown merchant. And you already have Alvin Kamara, who, yes, is falling off and might even be suspended for a little bit, but you could probably still get some good draft picks out of him. And during the making of this video, the Saints also brought back Jimmy Graham, and it's just like, why'd you do that? There was like no reason to do that. I thought he retired, honestly, by now. The Saints do have a pretty easy schedule and honestly might sweep the NFC South, and I actually think they could even maybe get up to 12 wins because that's just how easy the schedule is, but they probably at best get the 4th seed in the NFC this year and probably lose the wild card to either the Eagles or Cowboys, basically whoever comes second in the NFC East. Realistically, the Saints could easily get a boatload of draft picks for a rebuild. Even though Michael Thomas is injury prone, there's definitely a team out there that would bite the bullet and pick him up. You can probably get some good return for Alvin Kamara and Marshawn Lattimore too, and maybe if you really wanted to get some return for Cameron Jordan, but I wouldn't hate it if they kept him since he's probably going to be a Saint for life. Chris Olave is a great receiver to rebuild around too, and I think the gap between him and Garrett Wilson is honestly way closer than people may think, and in some aspects I believe Chris Olave is actually better than Wilson. Olave showed that he can produce with shaky quarterback play, so if the Saints can start a rebuild right now and go get a franchise quarterback in the draft, the Saints could easily have a very deadly QB and wide receiver duo. Maybe you don't get a quarterback in the 2024 draft and wait until 2025, but there is some good quarterback talent in both. However, right now it seems like the Saints are just going to stick to mediocrity and never really go anywhere for the next couple of years, which is a place you never really want to be in. They also got swept by the Panthers last year, which I think is a sign it's time to start the rebuild.
Shiver me timbers, it's been a cold winter. The Bucks putting the foot on your team, call Master Splinter.
So half of the NFC South is in this video, so I think it kind of just shows you how that division is stacking up right about now. The Buccaneers were really one of the most disappointing teams last year. They basically had the same team from the Super Bowl winning team, but everyone just underperformed. They had one of the worst offenses in the league that never scored more than 31 points and a decent defense when they played below average teams, and only made the playoffs because of Tom Brady's witch magic, because of course course, the 1 year Tom Brady has a losing record, his entire division sucks, and gets a free bid into the playoffs. I mean, of course, they did get exposed by my Dallas Cowboys in the wild card, which was awesome, but now the Buccaneers are still trying to win a couple of games by trading for Baker Mayfield and keeping basically all of their team from last year. Look, if Tom Brady goes 8-9 with this team, Baker Mayfield is not doing the job. But now we get the legendary QB battle of Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask. My problem with this is I think both of these guys, Baker Mayfield more specifically, are actually going to try to win a couple of games and will probably end up getting the Buccaneers team to about 5 to 6 wins, which would put them out of the contention for the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. I mean, like, why are you guys not blowing it up right now? The only reason why the Buccaneers were actually able to get a ring eventually was because of quarterback play. And dang it, man, the NFC needs more great QBs, so why not bring in Caleb Williams? They are basically in the same position as the Raiders. Even if your team falls to the second pick, that may be all you need if the Cardinals end up with the first overall pick. The Buccaneers also have way more pieces to give away to help a rebuild, like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. They also got some good pieces on defense like Shaq Barrett and Devin White, who I think is overrated, but a team would definitely still pick him up. The Buccaneers, if they really wanted to, probably have the best chance out of all the teams in this video to get Caleb Williams and rebuild a strong team around him. So I don't really understand the mindset going on in Tampa Bay right now. Baker Mayfield, in my opinion, is going to try to revive his career with the Bucs. So if he's starting, they're going to win a couple of games, especially playing in the NFC South. The Bucs also had the audacity to bring back the creamsicle jerseys this year with Baker Mayfield probably at the starting position. I don't know, maybe Kyle Trask gets in. I'm just saying Caleb Williams would look great in those creamsicles.
So wear that blue and gold right to the Super Bowl.
Okay, the final team in this video is the Rams. Now, the Rams did what they set out to do. They bought a bunch of pieces to help them win the Super Bowl and totally neglected the future of the team and won the Super Bowl, which honestly, like, respect, because most teams don't have the balls to do what they did. And I am sure most NFL fans would love to take a Super Bowl win with a couple of down years after. I know I would. But the Rams are a particular case since they are the worst defending Super Bowl champions ever, going 5-12 the year after they won the Super Bowl. And this year, they could even be worse. I mean, seriously, can you name one Rams defensive player besides Aaron Donald? Surprisingly, the Rams actually have a first-round pick this year, which is the first time they have one since they drafted Jared Goff in 2016. However, I do think the Rams would basically have to blow up everything on this team if they wanted to start a rebuild, since they only have like 4 good players: Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee, and Aaron Donald. So if the Rams did rebuild, they would need to undergo a complete overhaul of the team, since they basically need to upgrade at every position. But since the Rams thankfully have their own first-round pick, they can pick whatever QB in the draft they want to if they go rebuild-o mode. I mean, seriously, look at this defense. They could honestly match the Cardinals if they give up like Matthew Stafford or something. But that being said, the Rams did give Matthew Stafford a contract extension that goes to 2026. However, the Rams apparently have already considered trading Aaron Donald before the trade deadline, which could be a sign they actually are thinking of starting a rebuild, which props to them because this roster is going nowhere. If they wanted to start the rebuild, I assume the Rams would keep Cooper Kupp for their next franchise QB, so they would have someone to throw to, which of course he's a great receiver for that job. I honestly think the Rams could go to their winning ways a lot sooner than a lot of people think if they do go full blow up the team mode. However, since they already won the Super Bowl, I feel like the owners and GMs are a bit more relaxed on the idea of a rebuild since they already got their main goal for their fans. And that's the video. Those are the 4 teams that I think need to start a rebuild right now. If you agree or disagree, please let me know in the comments and tell me other teams that you think maybe need to start a rebuild right now. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching the video and I'll see you guys later.